All right, guys. I think that the future is here. I think the future is now. Welcome to the present of 2020, in which apparently now we have Xbox and PS5 with rumors and hardware and all that stuff starting to go. Uh, Unfortunately, I was not able to really see this live because I wanted to at least give you my I guess reactions to the PS5. I guess the first ever official details that come from it. Here's the thing. I see. Oh, what's up, greatest noob? I see you already. Here's the thing. I did stay away from spoiler stuff. Like I basically don't know almost anything about it. There is just the one thing that I was hearing, in which that if I'm trying to expect any games, do not expect any games. Just expect mainly like the hardware specifications. They've done this multiple times already. I believe that like when the PS4 was first announced, that they did something like this, to where like they just described the details of what the PS4 at that time would do, and then they did like an official like, here's what the hardware looks like, here's what the games that they're gonna support, launch titles, etc., etc. I did not expect to hear anything about launch stuff to begin with anyway. So I wasn't really expecting any of that. But the one thing I am a little concerned about, I don't like that dislike ratio. I don't really know why. The only thing that I could think of is like maybe people were expecting PS5 to like outperform the Xbox One X or whatever the fuck it's called, Scarlet. I don't remember it anymore. Series X, that's what it's called. I guess maybe it's something along with that. Maybe it's also the people that were expecting games and stuff to go. I'm not really so sure, but I'm going in through this as blind as fuck. Don't mind me with the layout that we have here. It's kind of like the best thing that I can kind of, do for this thing for now. I don't know. I'm just excited to see like what we're gonna have for next gen anyway. I'm probably gonna get both. I'm really liking the Series X. Not really so much for the specs. Oh Jesus. I'm not really expecting like for either one to be better. I'm probably just gonna get both. Xbox Series X at least having almost full backwards compatibility is a very big it's a very big drive for me to go into it, because I really wanted to like go back and play some original stuff like Ninja Gaiden, and go through like maybe, I don't know, Lost Planet or Lost Odyssey again. And there's a lot of stuff that you would want for both, and I already have the Switch. Why not just get both? I usually do, but I usually stick with one. Usually it's the PlayStation anyway. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess we'll certainly see. Feel like SAD versus teraflop. Oh, solid state drive versus. Oh. So you're saying like internal memory bandwidth versus like full on power. Okay. I don't know, man. I guess we'll find out. Like I said, I'm completely blind to it. I skipped out on most information, but the only thing I heard, like I said before, was just hardware. It's mainly what it's going to be talking about. So, you know what? I guess we'll just hop right into it. This is taken straight out of the PlayStation YouTube channel. This is, I think, where they streamed it from. It says it right there. It's coming from them, so it's like the official source. Yeah, I guess we'll just start it here. Let me just at least check the audio on my end.
Hi.
Okay, I see that it's coming up from there. And okay, I think I can hear it.
Unfortunately, we had to...
Okay, yeah, I can. All right. So, fuck it, let's just jump. Oh, wow, it looks like they already have stuff ready to go. So, I guess let me take my notepad out and just... I mean, the information's probably out in other outlets, so I don't really need to take notes. But without further delay, we're also going to be going right when this... I'm going to reset the stream after I'm done with this reaction so I can have the full video recording, and then I'll have the recording for what we're playing. We're going to be continuing Infamous after this, so stay tuned for that. And it'll be... We'll talk about like what this is after. I'm not going to really pause it too much unless like there's something that I want to really discuss, and you'll get my honest reactions coming from it anyway. But let's just jump right in.
Hi. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the talk that we had planned for GDC. But we do have some super exciting
I got my
news
volume
about
all the way up.
PS5. And who better to bring that to you than the one and only Mark Cerny. Without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jim.
Holy shit. Wow, he went full on redhead.
PlayStation 5 games. Today, I want to talk a bit about our goals for the PlayStation 5 hardware and how they influenced the development of the console. I think you all know I'm a big believer in console generations. Once every 5 or 6 or 7 years, a console arrives with substantially new capabilities. There's a lot of...
I still think that the PS2 is the greatest of all time. Fight me.
And soon there's games that could never have been created before. Now, it used to be that as a console designer, you'd somehow intuit what would be the best set of capabilities for the new console, and then build it in complete secrecy. For the PlayStation consoles, that period lasted through PlayStation 3, a powerful and groundbreaking console, but
yeah,
also
groundbreaking that it was $600 at the start.
as it was initially
I didn't get mine until it was $300.
So, starting with PlayStation 4, we've taken a different approach, roughly centered around 3 principles. The first of these is listening to the developers, which is to say that a lot of what we put into a console derives directly from the needs and aspirations of the game creators. We definitely do have some ideas of our own, but at the core of our philosophy for designing consoles is that game players are here for the fantastic games, which is to say that game creators matter. Anything we can do.
I mean, did Guerrilla Games really matter when it first launched with fucking Killzone? That shit was a travesty.
Every 2 years, I take a tour of the industry. I go to the various...
But PS4 certainly has the better games. So
sit down and discuss how they're doing with the current consoles and what they'd like to see in future consoles. This requires weeks on the road, as reaching the bulk of the game creators involves talking to well over 100 people at something like 24 publishers and developers. And it is incredibly valuable. By the way, the feature most requested by the developers, that was an SSD, which we were very happy to put in the hardware, but a lot of problem solving was required. I'll be doing a deep dive on the SSD and surrounding systems later on in this talk.
Well, we definitely get to hear some of that
Also,
shit.
a generational leap while keeping the console sufficiently familiar to game developers. I think about this in terms of balancing evolution and revolution. Now, with PlayStation 1, 2, and 3, the target was a revolution each time, with a brand new feature.
That's certainly true, especially
was
coming
great
from the
in
jump
many
of
ways,
PS1 to
but time
PS2.
for the developers to get up and running got longer with each console. In the past, I've called
Dude, the
this
PS2 was like the
crunch
best
time.
DVD player of all
Here's
time.
what I had for those 3 consoles. To be clear, I'm not talking about time to make a game. Developers will be ambitious, and it may take them 6 years or so to realize their vision. What I'm talking about is that dead time before graphics and other aspects of game development are up and running, and trying to minimize that. On the other hand, if we're trying to reduce that dead time to 0, that means the hardware architecture can't change at all. We're handcuffed. We need to judge for each feature what value it adds and whether it's worth the increase in developer time needed to support it.
That's fair.
So with PlayStation 4, we were able to strike a pretty good balance between performance and familiarity. We got required learning back to PlayStation 1 levels. With PS5, the GPU was definitely the area we felt the most tension between adding new features and keeping a familiar programming model. Ultimately, I think we've ended
Oh,
up with
fuck
something
you. Oh,
even
come
more
on.
comfortable.
I swear, if this shit just looks like that, I would buy that. If you just gave me a thing that looked like that, the PS logo with the PS5 written on it, and it's just a thing surrounding fucking a box, I would probably buy that. But no tease of like what it's gonna look like. Oh, come on.
That
That's
feels
shit.
like we're striking about the right balance. I'll go into
What's up, liberal, virgin,
about
plus
philosophy
100?
with the GPU,
I don't
and
know who you're
specific
talking about,
feature
but
set that resulted from it.
apparently that's the goal of life. Sure.
It's also very important for
You
us
want to add
as
more
a
kids to the
hardware
world? Go
team to
ahead,
find
liberal.
New dreams, by which I mean something other than CPU performance, GPU performance, and the amount of RAM. The increase in graphics performance over the past 2 decades has been astonishing, but there are other areas in which we can innovate and provide significant value to the game creators and through them
So what
the player.
that means to me is that
That's
they're
why
not
the
going to really
SSD
focus
is
on
very much on the list of
like
directions to
res-
explore,
maybe
regardless of what
resolution
came
would be
out
nice,
of the
but
conversations
not so
with
much of
developers
graphic
and
fidelity or
publishers.
anything like that.
The biggest feature in this category is the custom engine for audio. That's today's final topic. The push for vastly improved audio, and in particular 3D audio, isn't something that came out of the developer meetings. It's much more the case that we had a
Sony
dream
is
of what
definitely
might
more
be
familiar with the
possible
like the 3D
5
audio
years from now,
capability because
and
they've
then
done it
worked
with their
out a number of
TVs,
steps
they've
to
done it
take
with their
precisely
headsets and stuff, having
that.
dynamic audio
So
capability.
here again are the 3 principles. The first being enabling the desires of developers to drive the hardware design. To me, the SSD really is the key to the next generation. It's a game changer. And it was the #1 ask from developers for PlayStation 5. As in, we know it's probably impossible, but can you put an SSD in it? That was a discussion we were also having internally. It was clear that the presence of a hard drive in every PlayStation 4 was having a positive impact. A lot of things that would simply have been impossible at Blu-ray disc speeds were now possible. At the same time, though, in 2015 and 2016, when we were having these conversations, developers were already banging up against the limits of the hard drive, and a lot of developer time was being spent designing around slow load speeds. I want to focus in on just one number here, which is how long it takes to load a gigabyte of data from a hard drive. The difficulty being that hard drives are neither particularly fast nor flexible. If all your data is in one block, which is frankly not very likely, you can load 50 to 100 megabytes a second, depending on where the data is located on the hard drive. Let's
Yeah,
assume it's on the
that's
hard drive,
honestly
which means loading
pretty
a
accurate.
gigabyte
Like
is
it takes a
fantastic.
while.
If you compress your
Yeah.
game packages, you can fit more data on the Blu-ray disc and also effectively boost your hard drive read speed by the compression ratio. We support zlib decompression on PlayStation 4 that gets you something like 50% more data on the disc and 50% higher effective read speed. Unfortunately, though, it's highly likely that your data is scattered around in various files on the hard drive, as well as sourced from multiple locations within those files. So lots of seeks are needed at 2 to 50-ish milliseconds each. My rule of thumb is that the hard drive is spending 2/3 of its time seeking, and only 1/3 of its time actually loading data. Putting all of that together, a gigabyte is very roughly 20 seconds to load from a hard drive.
Yeah, honestly, like
Now-
that's my when I was building my my PC with my brother, he was telling me how I should definitely save a lot more of my games through the solid state drive rather than the hard drive itself. That certainly goes to show that they're taking that type of mindset from a PC build to the next gen, which honestly is what we kind of need. It's not that load times are bad, just you can see like night and day when I'm like if you have the same game on two different things, like a PS4 and the PC, load times are certainly like the biggest comparison that you can have. And I've done that multiple times. I've said that like for different games that I've either had on a PlayStation or whatever, and I tried on PC, and I'm like, yo, the load time is actually kind of fucking ridiculous. So I'm actually really glad that this is like seems like a big focus for them, because that's honestly like it's not the biggest problem, but it's still a problem that the less load times, the better, or lack thereof, you know?
Not much data. Games are using 5 or 6 gigabytes of RAM on PlayStation 4, so boot times and load times can get pretty grim. Or to put that differently, as a player, you wait for the game to boot, wait for the game to load, wait for the level to reload every time you die, and you wait for what is euphemistically called fast travel. And all of that
yeah, get that fast travel in, son.
Not just an SSD, but a blindingly fast SSD. If we could load 5 gigabytes a second from it, what would change? Now, SSDs are completely different from hard drives. They don't have seeks as such. If you have a 5 gigabyte a second SSD, you can read data from 1,000 different locations in that second.
So what this is kind of telling me is that when the game will, like if you get a physical copy and you like download like the application or whatever to the PlayStation, you can save it to your solid state instead of having it being run off the hard drive, which sounds better to me.
We're talking 2 orders of magnitude. Meaning
1 gigabyte in 20 seconds, 2 gigabytes in 0.27 seconds. Okay.
5 gigabytes a second.
We would definitely have to see like that in play, like with a live demo, which I don't think that they are gonna do any of that. These are just like number ops.
Same for a reload. You're immediately back in the action after you die. And fast travel becomes so fast it's blink and you miss it. As game creators, we go from trying to distract.
I'm just thinking of how fast Skyrim will be on a console this time instead of me having to worry about it on PC.
Fast that we might even have to slow that transition down. Pretty cool, right? But for me, this is not the primary reason to change from a hard drive to an SSD. The primary reason for an ultra-fast SSD is that it gives the game designer freedom. Or to put that differently, with a hard drive, the 20 seconds that it takes to load a gigabyte can sabotage the game that the developer is trying to create. I think almost all of us in the room have experienced this, maybe in different ways. Say we're making an adventure game and we have 2 rich environments where we each want enough textures and models to fill memory, which you can do as long as you have a long staircase or elevator ride or a windy corridor where you can ditch the old assets and then take 30 seconds or so to load the new assets. Having a 30-second elevator ride is a little extreme. More realistically, we'd probably chop the world into a number of smaller pieces and then do some calculations with sight lines and run speeds like we did for Haven City when we were making Jak 2.
Hey, Jak 2, boys!
Has changed since then.
Wow.
All those twisty passages are there for a reason. There's a whole subset of level design dedicated.
Like the map looks,
but still,
it looks identical, man. Look at that.
Just wants to make their game.
It probably is just like the blueprint of like what they were working on. So weird. Oh, does that mean that Jak is coming on PS5? Ooh, why specifically talk about a PS2 game, huh? Why talk about a PS2 game?
The reason for that target was streaming. As in, what if the SSD is so fast that as the player is turning around, it's possible to load textures for everything behind the player in that split second? If you figure that it takes half a second to turn, that's 4 gigabytes of compressed data you can load. That sounds about right for next gen. Anyway, back to the hard drive. Another strategy for increasing effective read speed is to make big sequential chunks of data. For example, we might group all the data together for each city block. That removes most of the seeks, and the streaming gets faster. But there's a downside too, which is that frequently used data is included in many chunks and therefore is on the hard drive many, many times. Marvel's Spider-Man uses this strategy, and though it works very well for increasing the streaming,
yeah, I've seen a lot of those tech build demos for this.
As a result. Some of the objects like mail
when like nothing was like added, they just showed off like what the build would look like and what the cars look like.
What I'm describing here
that certainly sounds a lot like very familiar when they talk about that.
Style. Either level design gets a little bit boring in places, or the data is duplicated.
Now I actually kind of want to play
no
Spider-Man
on the Blu-ray disc. And you end up with hard limits on the player's run speed or driving speed. The player can't go faster than the load speed from the hard drive. And finally, I'm sure many of you have noticed that after a patch download, the PlayStation 4 will sometimes take a long time to
Oh my
install.
fucking god, please address this
That's
shit.
because when just part of a file has been changed, the new data can be downloaded pretty quickly. But before the game boots up, a brand new file has to be constructed that includes the changed portion.
Okay.
Otherwise, every change would add a seek or two. Even so, you can occasionally see this happening on game titles. They start to hitch once they get patched enough. With an SSD, though, no seeks, so no need to make brand new files with the changes incorporated into them, which means no installs as you know them today.
So what would that
There's
mean?
yet one more benefit, which is that system memory.
Well,
can be
oh,
used
okay,
much
just don't
more
talk about it.
On PlayStation 4,
Yeah, I
game
guess
data on the hard
Resident
drive
Sleeper,
feels very
sure.
distant and difficult to
If
use.
you saw it already
Until
live,
you
then
realize
there
you
you
need a
go.
piece of data, it's much
But
too
I'm
late
actually
to go
interested
out
in the
and look.
numbers,
So
so
system memory has to
no
contain
Resident
all
Sleeper
of
for
the
me.
data that could be used in the next 30 seconds or so of gameplay. That means a lot of the 8 gigabytes of system memory is idle. It's just waiting there to be potentially used. On PlayStation 5, though, the SSD is very close to being like more RAM. Typically, it's fast enough that when you realize you need a piece of data, you can just load it from the SSD and use it. There's no need to have lots of data.
Wait. Okay. Low latency, high bandwidth RAM. It's contains data for 1 second of gameplay, more RAM. Okay.
Parked in system memory waiting to potentially.
I didn't catch like that first part of like what they were
Different way
saying
of
about the
saying
package
that
going
is that
towards
most of
the RAM.
is working
But
on the
16
phone.
gigs of RAM is actually not bad.
This is one of the reasons.
I mean,
that
I think I have
16 gigabytes of
16
GPU
gigs on my
feels right
PC.
for PlayStation 5. The presence of the SSD reduces the need for a massive intergenerational increase in size. So back to the dream of the SSD. Here's the set of targets. Boot the game in a second. No load screens. Design freedom, meaning no twisty passages or long corridors. More game on the disk and more game on the SSD. And finally, those patch installs go away. The reality, though, is that the SSD is just one piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of places where bottlenecks can occur in between the SSD and the game code that uses the data. You can see this on PlayStation 4. If I use an SSD with 10 times the speed of a standard hard drive, I probably see only double the loading speed, if that. For PlayStation 5, our goal was not just that the SSD itself be 100 times faster. It was that game loads and streaming would be 100 times faster. So
File mapping,
every
coherency, and
single potential
decomposition.
bottleneck
Okay.
needed to be addressed. And there are a lot of them. Let's look at check-in and what happens when its overhead gets 100 times larger. Conceptually, check-in is a pretty simple process. Data is loaded into system memory from the hard drive or SSD. It's examined. A few values are tweaked to check it in, and then it's moved to its final location. At the SSD speed
I don't really know so much about that
last part,
check-in process,
moving
but
the data, meaning copying it from one location to another,
okay.
takes roughly an entire next-gen CPU core. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. If all the overheads get 100 times larger, that will cripple the frame rate as soon as the player moves and that massive stream of data starts coming off the SSD. So to solve all of that, we built a lot of custom hardware, namely a custom flash controller and a number of custom units in our main chip. The flash controller.
So these are all into the solid-state drive?
For smooth and bottleneck-free operation, but also with games in mind. For example, there are 6 levels of priority when reading from the SSD. Priority is very important. You can imagine the player heading into some new location in the world and the game requesting a few gigabytes of textures. And while those textures are being loaded, an enemy is shot and has to speak a few dying words. Having multiple priority levels lets the audio for those dying words get loaded immediately.
Okay.
On one side, that flash controller.
That doesn't really seem like
actual
that's new, but I
flash
think
drive
it's new when they
supplies
add it to the
storage.
solid-state
To
drive or
reach
something.
our bandwidth
Yeah, that
target
doesn't
of
really
5
sound new to
gigabytes a
me.
second, we ended up with a 12
No
channel
PS3,
interface.
PS2
8 channels
backward
with
compatibility. Oh, I did,
resulting
dude. I
bandwidth
okay. I didn't
speed
know.
is
Okay, I
actually
didn't know yet.
5.5
All right, well,
gigabytes a second. With a 12-channel interface, the
that
most
sucks.
natural size that emerges.
Like, is
is
that like legitly like what they said from the
825
start,
gigabytes.
or is that just like from? Because I didn't see this yet. I'm only going through it now. I'm only assuming that hopefully that they didn't specifically. I mean, we'll get to that point if they had it in this. Um, but I kind of expected it to just have PS4, like at the start, and then maybe add it towards, like down the line, like PS3s, then PS2, PS1, like how Xbox One did. Um, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see. But what's up, Vess? Xbox honestly sounds better. I mean, like, I'll certainly see as to when it actually comes through. Because we've all seen a lot for Series X, and I'm no doubt probably gonna get both. Just so that I could have the best of both worlds. But so far it sounds like this sounds better for like the overall game experience, like of what you would get from the games, rather than we're gonna push out the hardware to do the most. It's kind of like how you would concur, getting like the biggest graphics card with all the right equipment to max out your visuals and your lighting versus compatibility to where like you'll get the better run times and stuff like that. It really depends on what you're looking for, but I guess like most of like the third party stuff that will go on all platforms, if I was to get it on a better platform, you probably get it to look better on Xbox, I guess. But if you wanted to like run better and to seamlessly like do things quick in and out, you would probably want to get it for PS5. But I don't know, I guess we'll just see the rest of it. PS4 is the first 100 games. Oh, for the first 100 games? Huh. No, yeah, I know it was out. Like I knew like when it was trending and it was on, but I literally stayed off all social media so that way I could do like, my own analysis and to see it myself, but Flacker.
The key question for us was,
hey, Honoron's got the TB though, so you got to hit him up.
To add more, but Flash certainly doesn't come cheap, and we have a responsibility to our gaming audience to be cost effective with regards to what we put in the console. Ultimately, we resolved this question by looking at the play patterns of a broad range of gamers. We examined the specific games that they were playing over the course of a weekend or a week or a month, and whether that set of games would fit properly on the SSD. We were able to establish that the friction caused by reinstalls or redownloads would be quite low, and so we locked in on that 825 gigabyte size, while also preparing multiple strategies so that those who want...
Well, you said 825 gigs, so that sounds like it's going to be off the gate a terabyte.
On the other side, it connects to our main custom chip via 4 lanes of Gen 4 PCIe. And inside the main custom chip is a pretty hefty unit dedicated to I/O. Before we talk about what that does, let's talk compression for a moment. PlayStation 4 used zlib as its compression format. We decided to use it again on PlayStation 5, but on my 2017 tour of developers, I learned about a new format called Kraken from Rad Game Tools. It's like
very specific on your Kraken stuff.
Simple.
They're gonna bring back that pirate game that was canceled. They're just teasing all these games. Jack 2, this Kraken shit with the fucking like battle system with like a battle royale on the sea. They're subtly telling us about games. I got water, TP, fuck TP baby wipes. Yeah. I don't know. Some people just don't know how to properly wipe, so then you get the baby. That's why they call it baby wipes.
Handling over 5 gigabytes of Kraken format.
Hell, I got water too.
After decompression, that typically becomes 8 or 9 gigabytes, but the unit itself is capable of outputting as much as 22 gigabytes a second if the data happen to compress particularly well. By the way, in terms of performance, that custom decompressor equates to 9 of our Zen 2 cores. That's what it would take to decompress the Kraken stream with a conventional CPU. There's a lot more in the custom I/O unit.
I'm not gonna lie, I actually don't know like what the compressing and stuff is.
Exactly where it wants to send the data coming off of the SSD. This equates to another Zen 2 core or 2 in terms of its copy performance. Its primary purpose is to remove check-in as a bottleneck. There's 2 dedicated I/O coprocessors and a large RAM pool. These aren't Zen 2 cores. They're there principally to direct the variety of custom hardware around them.
Yeah, this
one of the
coprocessors and stuff. This loses me because I'm not really sure. So like, what goes into a solid state too much.
The other is responsible for memory mapping, which I know doesn't sound like anything related to the SSD, but a lot of developers map and remap memory as part of file.
Okay, so they're saying like,
and this
I
too
guess that
can
he's
help.
talking about like how development goes from
There
when they
are
process
coherency
games and
engines to assist
uh
the co-processors.
like in development
Coherency
for
comes up a lot
developers
in Play
instead of
2.
like
Probably
the actual
biggest
consumer.
coherency issue is stale data in the GPU.
Maybe he'll like see like the
Flushing
compare and
all of the
contrast of like
GPU
what
caches
they could
whenever
make
the
through the
SSD is
SSD and
loaded
then what
is
the
an
players can get
unattractive
from the
option that
SSD.
could really hurt the GPU performance. So we've implemented a gentler way of doing things.
The custom
where the
825 gig.
coherency
No,
engine
yeah,
inform the
but what I'm
GPU
saying
of
is
the
that I'm not
overall
really sure as
address
to what
ranges and
that
cut through
necessarily means
scrubbers
for
of
us
several
yet.
dozen
Like I
GPU
think, like I
caches
said, he's
and
trying to
pinpoint evictions
specifically
of
talk
just
about like
those
the development
coherence ranges.
for these
The
games.
best thing is, as a game developer, when you read
Yeah,
from
see,
the
he's still on
SSD,
that
you don't
on that
need to know
topic, which
any
is
of this.
which that's good,
You
but
don't even need to know that your data is compressed. You just indicate what data you'd like to read from your original uncompressed file and where you'd like to put it, and the whole process of loading it
yeah,
happens
this would
visibly
be a
clean
very good
and at very
like
high speed.
thing for one of my
Back to
friends that
computing.
went to
Thanks to
like
all
gaming
that
school
surrounding
to like
hardware,
learn
our
about games.
5.5
He would probably
gigahertz
know
system
more
really
as to
should
like what
translate into
he's
something
talking
like
about for like
100 times
you know,
faster I/O than
bandwidth
PS4,
and compressing
allow
for the
dream of
files to
no
move in and
load
out and to
screen
put it
and
wherever you
super
want.
fast
This I
streaming
wouldn't
to
know of.
become a reality. Having said that, expandability of our SSD is going to be quite important. Flash is costly, and you may very well want to add storage to whatever we put in the console. Now, the kind of storage...
So wait. So he just said, yeah, he's just about to go into it. So he can expand. You can expand with your hard drive with the solid state drive. So that means that to me, they're gonna have like how they have for the PS4s and stuff, external hard drives, for just in case you wanted to like load up or put some things off, to not really rely on your SSD and you can just expand storage. Maybe that's what he's going into now.
you need depends on how you're going to use it. If you have
I
an
wouldn't
extensive
really be
PlayStation
too
4
sure of that
library
because I
and you'd
got
like
most
to
of
take
it so
advantage
far,
of
just when it
backwards
comes to
compatibility play
specifics
those games on
of the solid
PlayStation
state
5,
drive because
then
I'm
a
new to it
large
myself.
external hard
That
drive
I
is
don't know
ideal.
of.
You can leave your games on the hard drive and play them directly from there. Thus
I guess
saving
you'll have to
your
watch the
SSD
rest of the
storage for your
hour
PlayStation 5
reaction
titles.
to find out.
Or you can copy your active PlayStation 4 titles to the SSD. If your purpose in adding more storage is to play PlayStation 5 titles, though, ideally you would add to your SSD storage.
Wait,
Save it
hold
to
on.
play those games on PlayStation 5. Then a to whatever.
Let him start over because I didn't catch the
Now,
first part.
The kind of storage you need depends on how you're going to use it. If you have an extensive PlayStation 4 library and you'd like to take advantage of backwards compatibility to play those games on PlayStation 5, then a large external hard drive is ideal. You can leave your games on the hard drive and play them directly from there, thus saving the pricier SSD storage for your PlayStation 5 titles, or you can copy your active PlayStation 4 titles to the SSD. If your purpose in adding more storage is to play PlayStation 5 titles, though, ideally you would add to your SSD storage.
Okay, so I think what he's getting at is you can PS4. So it's as Vest said earlier, you can have PS4 games be backwards compatible for 5, but for the best way to use PS4 games, if you wanted to do that, is to run it off of the hard drive rather than the solid state drive. I guess that kind of makes sense considering it already has stuff built in for the PS4 to just transfer over to a PS5. And then all you would have to do is just use that memory that you had saved there rather than copying it, saving it to the solid state, then to run it off of that because they're mainly using the power for that for the PS5. That actually does make sense.
Certain M2.
But how do you transfer specifically the games from the hardware unless you like copy the saves that are from the 4 to the 5 manually, or you could just do like a cloud save, then you could save all your stuff back to the PS5. Maybe they could do it that way, or the applications. I don't actually know what that's going to do. Xbox side after 360. I mean, I guess it really depends on, like, again, I'll probably get both, but what I'll really be playing is most likely the 5 anyway, rather than the Series X, because if they're still doing the online practices of what they're doing now, that means that I would have to both get Xbox One or Xbox Series X and PS5, then get Xbox Live again, then still stick with PS5, while still maintaining a PC and getting a Switch. So that's not really going to be so ideally for me to switch all that shit back and forth. But I do like the idea of having the Xbox Series X be fully backwards compatible and to also have their own libraries of stuff specifically just for the Xbox, not for PC, which they probably won't because they have the licensing agreement for Windows and all that to bring all that shit for Windows 4, Xbox, or whatever the fuck they call it. At least with 5, they're branching off to PC now with Horizon Zero Dawn, but not every studio is probably going to do that. So that means that it gives more an incentive for first parties to stick with 5, especially with, the up in quality with the hard drives and solid state drives for them to work on it. So I guess it would basically be like working on a PC. If they get PC spectacles, then I don't know. We'll certainly see, but I'll probably get both. That's a lot of money, and not one that I could really afford. I don't know. I will probably get both. I really just, honestly, I want to see what the console looks like, rather than the refrigerator, even though it's not a refrigerator. I've seen the models. And I also do want, like, a new controller. I want to see, like, what innovations or changes they could have with the PS4 controller. I think that the PS4 controller, I used to really like it, and now I'm starting to not really like it so much. And I didn't really like the Xbox One controller, and I'm starting to like those. So I don't know what's going to change and what we're going to be having. We're probably going to stick with Bluetooth. Okay. I don't know. We'll find out for sure. You'll get 5 and a beefier PC. No point in Xbox with PC. Yeah, for sure. Like I said, the main reason why I would get the Xbox Series X is for the full backwards compatibility that you can probably get with PC ups and whatever, or you could just get an Xbox One. I don't know. I guess we'll certainly find out as to what the launch titles will be, because 5 I'll certainly get, and maybe down the line, like how I did with the PS3, whenever it would go down in price, I might get the Series X. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to see and find out.
These are internal drives that you can get on the open market and install in a bay in the PlayStation 5. As for which ones we support and when, I'll get to that in a moment. They connect through the custom I/O unit, just like our SSD does, so they can take full advantage of the decompression, I/O coprocessors, and all the other features I was talking about. Here's the catch, though. That commercial drive has to be at least as fast as ours. Games that rely on the speed of our SSD need to work flawlessly with any M2 drive. When I gave the Wired interview last year, I said that the PlayStation 5 SSD was faster than anything available on PC. At the time, commercial M2 drives used PCIe 3.0, and 4 lanes of that cap out at 3.5 gigabytes a second. In other words, no PCIe 3.0 drive can hit the required spec. M2 drives with PCIe 4.0 are now out in the market. We're getting samples and seeing 4 or 5 gigabytes a second from them. By year's end, I expect there will be drives that saturate 4.0.
Okay, so I guess he said at the time when he talked about the PS5, it was like our SSD is running better than what we have in the market, and now now that's not the case for sure. That was expected, sure.
The NVMe specification lays out a priority scheme for requests that the M2 drives can use, and that scheme is pretty nice, but it only has 2 true priority levels. Our drive supports 6. We can hook up a drive with only 2 priority levels, definitely, but our custom I/O unit has to arbitrate the extra priorities rather than the M2 drive's flash controller, and so the M2 drive needs a little extra speed to take care of issues arising from the different approach. That commercial drive also needs to physically fit inside of the bay we created in PlayStation 5 for M2 drives. Unlike internal hard drives, there's unfortunately no standard for the height of an M2 drive. And some M2 drives have giant heat sinks. In fact, some of them even have their own
Yeah, it's
fan.
still going on for
Right
SSDs.
now,
I'm just going to try and get as much information as I can, because I don't really...
Beta, as they get ready
It sounds nice, sure.
Year-end, we'll also be doing some compatibility testing to make sure that the architecture of particular M2 drives isn't too foreign for the games to handle. Once we've done that compatibility testing, we should be able to start letting you know which drives will physically fit and which drive samples have benchmarked appropriately high in our testing. It would be great if that happened by launch, but it's likely to be a bit past it. So please hold off on getting that M2 drive until you hear from us. Okay.
Yeah,
don't
know. Sure. You're definitely not talking to me.
Is the second of them. This was definitely a recurring theme with the GPU.
Okay. So what I got so far is SSDs versus hard drive. A lot of games coming from PS4 that's going to be backwards compatible. are gonna run. You would want to run it off hard drive rather than solid state. Sounds like load times are gonna be incredibly fixed. Like developments are gonna be much better for them, and I guess that they would want to push towards compatibility versus like full hardware specifications like the Series X. And that honestly could be a better approach for a lot of stuff if they want to bring PS1, PS2, and PS3. Because if they do that and I could just pick up any of my games that I have over there, like you can't see it, but all the way over there on my collections, and just pop in any game and just let it run, I think it would just be dead zone. Because I have so many things I would want to show off and play that maybe I never played before on just one thing. And the best way you could do that only right now is probably through emulation on PS5 or on PC, excuse me. But with this, hopefully this gives us more of an incentive to have more accessibility and more like of a library than what we would get from just like a 5 and their games or with just PS4. Hopefully we'll see more to it than that, and they'll probably add to it like the Series X or the Xbox One X is doing now. So I don't know. This guy makes me feel. Yeah, I'm understanding. Like I'm definitely retaining the information, and I'm understanding as to like where he's coming from on certain points. But when it comes to specifically like PC spectacles that I am not familiar with because I never ran with a PC or don't know what goes into it and how you can optimize all that I don't know. But it sounds like for the consumer base, that's what I got so far is, load times, backwards compatibility, how you would want to run it, and how it would run the best for your console, and developments will have better and more capability to load in and texturize for what you're playing through at any point. So we'll see. I don't know what else they're going to talk about.
We need new GPU features and capabilities. If we only have more performance, it's not really a new generation of console. Of course, many of these capabilities result in more performance. That's part of why a PlayStation 5 teraflop is more powerful than a PlayStation 4 teraflop. But we aren't just looking for the performance. We also need the ability to do something with the GPU that could not have been done before. And we need higher performance per watt. Every time we double the performance of some GPU component, we don't want to find out we've doubled the power consumed and the heat produced. But at the same time, we have to make sure the GPU can run PS4 games, and we have to ensure the architecture is easy
Here we fucking go.
to adopt. Now, backwards compatibility was handled masterfully by AMD. They treated it as a key need throughout the design process. As our solution to adding new features without blindsiding developers, we made sure that if there were new significant features, it would be optional to use them.
Okay.
The GPU supports ray tracing, but you don't have to use ray tracing to make your game. The GPU supports primitive shaders, but you can release your first game on PlayStation 5 without making any use of them. Before I get into the capabilities of the GPU, I'd like to make clear 2 points that can be quite confusing. First, we have a custom AMD GPU based on their RDNA 2 technology.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah, it was figured that they were going to run with AMD's, even though AMD really is kind of one of the bigger distributors for GPUs and stuff. They've certainly gotten better on the market, and they're definitely not like, what I have. I have like, Samsung for like the solid state. I'm running off of Intel and stuff. But AMD is certainly like for the price, it's very good. And it sounds like what they're using for this will also be very nice for it. I just don't know how they're going to compare to like a new or regular gen PC nowadays. Because I guess we'll have to compare mostly that with PS5 rather than Xbox, because they're only just catching up to maybe nowadays PCs anyway. So
I was talking about, then they end up being just for us. If you see a similar discrete GPU available as a PC card at roughly the same time as we release our console, that means our collaboration with AMD succeeded in producing technology useful in both worlds. It doesn't mean that we as Sony simply incorporated the PC part into our console.
Okay.
This continuous improvement in AMD technology means it's dangerous to rely on teraflops as an absolute indicator of performance, and CU count should be avoided.
So he's basically just saying yeah, we're using PC parts technically, but you can't assume that like just because we don't have the same amount of like storage or whatever to run most of this shit does not mean that it's not as good or something as what they have in corporation with AMD as they see here. I don't know exactly what the RDNA 2 flop is or CU, but it sounds like whatever PC is equivalent to like that terminology of what they're using for PS4, it's not the same hardware, so you can't assume that just because the numbers are low or whatever doesn't mean that it's worse or something.
In the case of CPUs, we all understand this. The PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 each have 8 CPUs, but we never think that meant the capabilities and performance are equal. It's the same for CUs. For one thing, they've been getting much larger over time. Adding new features means adding lots of transistors. In fact, the transistor count for a PlayStation 5 CU is 62% larger than the transistor count for a PlayStation 4 CU. Second, the PlayStation 5...
He's even getting when it's like, oh my god, I still have like a whole half an hour to talk about this shit.
One way you can achieve backwards compatibility is to put the previous console...
Run that back.
One way you can achieve backwards compatibility is to put the previous console's chipset in the new console, like we did with some PlayStation 3s. But that's, of course, extremely expensive.
Mm-hmm.
A better way is to incorporate any differences in the previous console's logic into the new console's custom chips, meaning that even as the technology evolves, the logic and feature set that PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro titles rely on is still available in backwards compatibility modes.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like they're specifically focusing on the PS4 hardware to be incorporated with PS5, which means that PS4s have also had the availability to run backwards compatibility through the PlayStation Now program, to where it was... They've also had PS2 games on my PS4, so maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing that we're having PS4 like as like the first thing to run off of PS5. Like maybe at some point they would activate stuff like that they already had with the 4, like with the PlayStation Now and shit, and you know, buying Bully and playing it here. I don't know if it's necessarily emulation of what they run it off for PS4. I think it is. But because they run it off emulation here, that means that to me, they're going to have emulation capability for PS5, which bleeds down into the PS2. Does it mean that we can have discs to be put into the 5 and then we could just play it straight up? No, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. I think it's going to be, you want to play these games or whatever, like from PS4 and backwards, you would have to either do the PlayStation Now service, which... or you could just be like how it was with the PS4 and then just buy the games again through an emulation market like the PlayStation Store and all that. So I hope that they do the latter, because I would much rather buy these games again rather than a whole subscription service, because I don't think anybody is buying PlayStation Now. Like it, even with that price drop and stuff, I hope that they completely change it around with the 5 coming out.
One advantage of this strategy is that once backwards compatibility is in the console, it's in. It's not as if a cost down will remove backwards compatibility like it did on PlayStation 3.
Okay.
Achieving this unification of functionality took years of efforts by AMD, as any roadmap advancement creates a potential divergence in logic. Running PS4 and PS4 titles at boosted frequencies has also added complexity. The boost is truly massive this time around, and some game code just can't handle it. Testing has to be done on a title-by-title basis.
Mm-hmm.
Results.
So it's the same thing with Xbox One.
Recently took a
That's
look
fine.
at the top 100 PlayStation 4 titles as ranked by playtime, and we're expecting almost all of them to be playable at launch.
Okay, let me hear that again so I can reiterate.
Testing has to be done on a title-by-title basis. Results are excellent, though. We recently took a look at the top 100 PlayStation 4 titles as ranked by playtime, and we're expecting almost all of them to be playable at launch on PlayStation 5.
Okay, so I like the wording here. He said specifically that testing needs to be done by a game-by-game basis. That's exactly what it sounds like for Xbox One right now. They're doing it by game. They're adding it slowly but surely. So I think they're taking notes from that and they're incorporating it with some sort of boost that adds better load times. Oh, for the love of God, I will play for the love of shit Bloodborne again if it adds better load time and better frame rate. this sounds like a dream come true for that game specifically, and I will run that shit back over and over again and play the DLCs for sure. That's on that point. And he also said that he looked at a specific article somewhere. Let me specifically hear exactly where he got from.
PS4 and PS4 titles at boosted frequencies has also added complexity. The boost is truly massive this time around, and some game code just can't handle it. Testing has to be done on a title-by-title basis.
What is it called?
Results are excellent, though. We recently took a look at the top 100 PlayStation 4 titles as ranked by playtime, and we're expecting
playtime. Oh, ranked by playtime. Oh, I guess he means like playtime as to like who plays the most out of the 100 games on PlayStation 4. Okay, I thought it was like an article. So what that means is that he's looking at the top 100 games that people are playing most likely, and using that as the basis to start with their backwards compatibility stuff. So whatever the top 100 games are, he said almost all of them will be available at launch at this point in time. Not necessarily all of them, and we still have plenty of months to go before that all can either be true or they add to it, or it could be false entirely. Who knows as to what they're going to be changing. But he specifically didn't say that it's just PlayStation 4 or anything like that. He's just saying that as an example because that's the structure and model that they're working for. Who the hell knows what they're going to add else for backwards compatibility? That, like, wording it like that, people I think maybe have misinterpreted that. And I think that I definitely understand like the corporate way of how they're wording it to not necessarily say anything but say everything at the same time. So still very up in the air, but not hearing a firm decomposition or deconfirmation for anything beyond or before PS4. I think that how he's wording it is very crucial, and I think we're still going to be getting backwards compatibility. But again, not at launch. Maybe within this time, like a year and a half, or 2 years down the line. But I'm definitely seeing some PS3, PS2, and PS1 games in the future.
With regards to new features, as I said, our strategy was to try to break new ground, but at the same time not to require use of the new GPU capabilities. For more than a decade, GPUs have imposed a restriction on game engines. Software handles vertex processing, but for the most part, dedicated hardware is responsible for the triangles and other geometry that the vertices form. That means it's not possible to do even basic optimizations, such as aborting processing of a vertex if all geometry that uses it is off-screen. PlayStation 5 has a
that
new
one
unit
I'm not
called
too
the
sure of.
Geometry engine, which brings handling of triangles and other primitives under full programmatic control. As a game developer, you're free to ignore its existence and use the PlayStation 5 GPU as if it were no more capable than the PS4 GPU, or you can use this new intelligence in various ways. Simple usage could be performance optimization, such as removing back-faced or off-screen vertices and triangles. More complex usage involves something called primitive shaders, which allow the game to synthesize geometry on the fly as it's being rendered. It's a brand new capability. Using primitive shaders on PlayStation 5 will allow for a broad variety of techniques, including smoothly varying level of detail, addition of procedural detail to close-up objects, and improvements to particle effects and other visual special effects.
Okay, they're just saying that
another major
development with, art
RDNA 2
and
GPU
rendering is going to be better. Okay,
strategy as
fair enough.
AMD's upcoming PC GPUs. The CUs contain a new specialized unit called the intersection engine, which can calculate the intersection of rays with boxes and triangles. To use the intersection engine, first you build what is called an acceleration structure. It's data in RAM that contains all of your geometry. There's a specific set of formats you can use. They're variations on the same BVH concept. Then, in your shader program, you use a
this I think is more again towards the developer side.
Check array against the BVH.
I think most of it's just gonna, like from here on out, it's just gonna be all that.
Ray box intersections. The shaders are free to do other work. Having said that, the ray tracing instruction is pretty memory intensive, so it's a good mix with logic-heavy code. There's of course no need to use ray tracing. PS4 graphics engines will run just fine on PlayStation 5, but it presents an opportunity for those interested. I'm thinking it'll take less than 1 million rays a second to have a big impact on audio. That should be enough for audio occlusion and some reverb calculations. With a bit more of the GPU invested
Yeah,
in ray
I guess
tracing,
this will
it should be
just be
possible to
handled
do
for
some very
whoever is
nice
actually
global
developing
illumination.
for this thing, ray
Having
tracing.
said that, adding ray-traced
Reflections,
shadows and
full ray
reflections
tracing,
to a
global
traditional
illumination,
graphics
audio.
engine could easily take hundreds of millions of rays a second, and full ray tracing could take billions. How far can we go? I'm starting to get quite bullish. I've already seen a PlayStation 5 title that's successfully using ray tracing-based reflections in complex animated scenes with only modest cost.
Okay, so he's saying that there's
Another
already a
set of issues
PS5
for the
game that's
GPU
using this type of
involve size and
rendering
frequency.
or
How big
performance.
do we make the GPU, and what frequency do we
Again,
run?
what that is, I don't
This is a
know.
balancing act. The chip has a cost, and there's a cost for whatever we use to supply that chip with power and to cool it. In general, I like running the GPU at higher frequency. Let me show you why. Here's two possible configurations for a GPU roughly of the level of the PlayStation 4 Pro. This is a thought experiment. Don't take these configurations too seriously. If you just calculate teraflops, you get the same number. But actually, the performance is noticeably different because teraflops is defined as the computational capability of the vector ALU. That's just one part of the GPU. There are a lot of other units. And those other units all run faster. when
Yeah, I
the
think he's
GPU
just kind of
is
reiterating as to
at 33%
like,
higher
here's our memory and
rest
here's how much
resolution
data
goes
we have for our
33%
memory.
faster.
But just because
Processing the command
it's
buffer
the same
goes
number or
that
lower
much
than
faster.
the number doesn't mean
L2
that it's going to
and,
perform better
other
or
caches
worse
have that
than
much
something
higher
else
gain,
if you were
and
just
so
to,
on.
if you're
About
basing
the
it just by
only
numbers is
downside
what
to
I'm
that
thinking he's
system
getting
memory
at.
is 33% further away in terms of cycles. But the large number of benefits more than counterbalance that. As a friend of mine says, a rising tide lifts all boats. Also, it's easier to fully use 36 CUs in parallel than it is to fully use 48 CUs. When triangles are small, it's much harder to fill all those CUs with useful work. So there's a lot to be said for faster, assuming you can handle the resulting power and heat issues, which frankly, we haven't always done the best job at. Part of the reason
Okay.
for that is, historically, our process for setting CPU and GPU frequencies has relied on some heavy-duty guesswork with regards to how much electrical power games will consume and how much heat will be produced as a result.
Wow, okay.
inside
He's
the
going
console.
into power consumption with
Power
like
consumption varies
heating.
a
So like,
lot
are they
between
going to add
games.
like
When
coolants
I
and stuff
played
to this
God of
thing?
War on my PS4 Pro, I know the power consumption is high just by the fan noise. But power isn't simply about engine quality. It's about the minutia of what's being displayed and how. It's counterintuitive, but processing dense geometry typically consumes less power than processing simple geometry, which is, I suspect, why Horizon's map screen, with its low triangle count, makes my PS4 Pro heat up so much.
Wow, okay.
Our process on previous consoles has been to try to guess what the maximum power consumption during the entire console lifetime might be, which is to say, the worst case scene in the worst case game, and prepare a cooling solution that we think will be quiet at that power level.
Okay.
If we get it right,
Yeah, honestly,
and
like a
watch
lot
this
of people
movie.
were complaining
If we get
about
it
like
wrong,
fan
the
noises
console will
and
be
stuff like
quite
that.
loud for the
So
higher power games, and there's even a chance that it might overheat and shut down if we misestimate power too badly. PlayStation 5 is especially challenging because the CPU supports 256-bit native instructions that consume a lot of power. These are great here and there, but presumably only minimally used. Or are they? If we plan for major 256-bit instruction usage, we need to set the CPU clock substantially lower or noticeably increase the size of the power supply and fan.
okay.
So,
Okay,
after
so no, he's
much
not talking about
discussion,
like
we
any
decided
coolant.
to
So
go
it sounds
in a
like they're still
very
going to be
different
using
direction
fans.
on PlayStation 5. We built a GPU with 36 CUs. Mind you, RDNA 2 CUs are large. Each has 62% more transistors than the CUs we were using on PlayStation 4. So if we compare transistor counts, 36 RDNA 2 CUs equates to roughly 58 PlayStation 4 CUs. It is a fairly sizable GPU. Then we went with a variable frequency strategy for PlayStation 5, which is to say we continuously run the GPU and CPU in boost mode. We supply a generous amount of electrical power and then increase the frequency of GPU and CPU until they reach the capabilities of the system's cooling solution. It's a completely different paradigm. Rather than running at constant frequency and letting power vary based on the workload, we run at essentially constant power and let the frequency vary based on the workload. We then tackled the engineering
I
challenge of a
understand
cost-effective and
that to a
high-performance
degree.
cooling solution designed for that specific power level.
But
In
we're
some
again,
ways,
it's
the
kind of have
focus
to be
of the
like
problem
shown
is
in
there are no
comparison to
more
like
unknowns. There's
what you could
no
be
need to
doing
guess
with
what
those
power consumption the
wavelengths or
worst-case
whatever
game
versus
might have.
frequency, one way or
As
the
for
other,
the
instead of just
details of the
explaining
cooling
it.
solution, we're saving them for
A live
another
demo
day.
certainly
I think
would
you'll be quite
help
happy
if
with
they
what
were
the
to show
engineering
something,
team
but
came up with. So, how fast can we run the GPU and CPU with this strategy? The simplest approach would be to look at the actual temperature of the silicon die and throttle the frequency on that basis. But that won't work. It fails to create a consistent PlayStation 5 experience. It wouldn't do to run a console slower simply because it was in a hot room. So rather than look at the actual temperature of the silicon die, we look at the activities that the GPU and CPU are performing and set the frequencies on that basis.
main custom
which makes
chip.
everything
Okay,
deterministic and repeatable.
the chip to what though?
While we're at it, we also use AMD's Smart Shift technology and send any unused power from the CPU
Is this just
to the
still
GPU
talking about
so
like?
it can squeeze out a few more
No, I
pixels.
think this is still talking
Benefits
about
of
the
this strategy are quite large. Running
the
a
AMD
GPU
portion that
at
they're
2
using.
gigahertz was looking like an unreachable target with the old fixed frequency strategy. With this new paradigm, we're able to run way over that. In fact, we have to cap the GPU frequency at 2.23 gigahertz so that we can guarantee that the on-chip logic operates properly. 36 CUs at 2.23 gigahertz is 10.3 teraflops, and we expect the GPU to spend most of its time at or close to that frequency and performance.
Okay.
Similarly, running the CPU at 3 gigahertz was causing headaches with the old strategy. But now we can run it as high as 3.5 gigahertz. In fact, it spends most of its time at that frequency. That
Oh,
doesn't
he's
mean
just
all
parallel,
games will
like
be
he's just
running
saying
at
exactly what he was
2.23
talking about with the
gigahertz and
frequency
3.5
shit.
gigahertz.
I think.
When that worst-case game arrives, it will run at a lower clock speed, but not too much lower. To reduce power by 10%, it only takes a couple of percent reduction in frequency, so I'd expect any downclocking to be pretty minor. All things considered, the change to a variable frequency approach will show significant gains for PlayStation gamers.
Okay.
The final of our
Yeah,
three principles is
that
about
last bit I'm
finding
not
new
really
gains.
too sure of.
It's important for us on the hardware team to find new ways to expand or deepen gaming, and that's what led us to a focus on 3D audio. As players, we experience the game through the visuals, through audio, and through the feedback we receive from the controller, such as rumble or haptics. Personally, I feel a game is just dead without audio. Visuals are, of course, important, but the impact of audio is huge as well.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, the audio team on a game project has to do a lot with a little. For example, on PlayStation 4, there's fierce competition for the Jaguar CPU cores. Audio typically ends up getting just a fraction of a core. That's not much of a computational resource, particularly when you consider that the visuals run at 30 or 60 frames a second, but audio processing needs to happen at almost 200 times a second. So, it's been tough going making forward progress on audio with PlayStation 4, particularly when PlayStation 3 was such a beast when it came to audio. The SPUs in Cell were almost a perfect device for audio rendering. Simple pipelined algorithms could really take advantage of asynchronous DMA and frequently reached 100% utilization of the floating point unit. There's unfortunately nothing comparable on PlayStation 4. Probably the most dramatic progress in the PlayStation 4 generation has been with virtual reality. The PS5
Shout out to CB for getting a VR though.
unit. It supports about 50 pretty decent 3D sound sources. And this provided a hint as to where we could go with audio, as well as some valuable experience. Not to oversimplify, but here were our goals for audio on PlayStation 5. The first goal was great audio for everyone, not just VR users or soundbar owners or headphone users. That meant audio had to be part of the console. It couldn't be a peripheral. The second goal was to support hundreds of sound sources. We didn't want developers to have to pick and choose what sounds would get 3D effects and which wouldn't. We wanted every sound in the game to have dimensionality.
Okay, so
And
I actually
finally,
well, let's get back into that.
to
Oops. Okay, that's fine. I actually do like this change on how they're doing audio because I also think that audio is really important. A lot of stuff kind of gets set in the backdrop for audio when it comes to like people who don't have like a soundbar, like you said, or headphones. But when they came out with that technology with the PS TV or whatever that is, like the TV that I had, it came with like a 3D surround sound type aspect. to that. I remember that definitively. But also for their PlayStation Gold headphones, which I had, the platinum ones, whatever the case, they seemed like really excel at to like hearing and knowledgeable as to where like you could put audio to, like if they're coming from upstairs, you would know that it's upstairs. If it's downstairs, you can hear if that's coming from below you, stuff like that. I remember it like being a very big thing for when they tried to target people to try and get it for like Uncharted 4. So like you could hear bullets like come from above you, so like to throw a grenade somewhere or some shit. Honestly, like if they're using that type of thing to like add to like just the general basis to what you hear from every game and somehow incorporate that to your regular speakers, I don't know how that they would incorporate that, but that honestly sounds like a great change. And like I said, audio certainly is very important when it comes to a lot of stuff, like especially like multiplayer games. People really love that type of shit. Me, I don't really care for multiplayer or anything, because I just want to like play the game and go. But for like dynamic, sounding games, like with cinematics and stuff, I would certainly want to see some sort of change with that.
Really
I don't know if they're
take on
gonna
the
elaborate as
challenges
to
of
what it does
presence
change, like
and locality.
from before.
Now,
but
when we say presence,
I don't know.
we mean the feeling that you're actually there. You've entered the matrix. It's
No,
not just something you
okay.
thought you could perfectly
Get me
achieve.
into the
The
matrix
idea
of
was that if
PlayStation.
you
So let me
stopped
get
using
into
just
Ape
the
Escape.
sound,
How about
and
that?
instead used lots of 3D audio sources for raindrops hitting the ground at all sorts of locations around you, then at some point your brain would take a leap and you'd begin to have this feeling of real presence inside the virtual world of the game. This has the capacity to affect your appreciation of the game, just like music in a game does. The concept of locality is simpler. It's just your sense of where the audio is coming from, to the right of you, behind you, above you. This can immerse you further in the game, and it can also directly enhance the gameplay. To use Dead Space as an example, I know.
Oh, let's go. Don't start with me. Jak 2 and fucking Dead Space? Okay. Dead Space being on PS3, Jak 2 being on PS2. Don't give me that fucking smile and tell me that PS4 is going to have 100 games at the start and we're going to do back compatibility. When I see fucking Dead Space and Jak 2 being represented as like definitive points as to how you're going to increase your first console or your fifth console, don't tell me that this shit ain't coming. Either give me a new fucking Dead Space, give me the remastered shit, whatever the case, or give me new Jak, or remaster those fucking games. Either way, don't fucking start. Don't fucking start. Give me that fucking smile.
Spooky locations.
Yeah, Knight's not allowed to lurk.
If you played the game using the TV speakers, you could tell that there was one last enemy growling and hunting you down, but it was difficult to tell quite where that enemy was. With headphones, you could tell that the enemy was somewhere on the right, which let you deduce, if you couldn't see it, that it must be somewhere behind and to your right. But with 3D audio with good locality, the idea is you know the enemy is precisely there, and you turn and you take it out. So, how do we know where a sound is coming from in the first place?
Fucking dead.
Well,
Dude, I want to play
both
some fucking
before
Dead
you
Space
can
right the
hear
fuck
how
now.
moving, evolutionarily speaking. Based on what direction the sound is coming from, sound waves bounce around inside the ear, there's some constructive and destructive interference, and the result is a change in volume. The phase of the sound also shifts, depending on what path the sound wave took to reach the ear canal. These volume changes and phase shifts are different for each direction and also vary depending on the frequency of the sound. Head size and head shape also impact the sound in a similar fashion. The way that the sound changes based
What
on
the fuck am I
direction
looking
and
at?
frequency can be encoded in a table called the head-related transfer function. or
Okay, frequency,
HRTF. Here's part of it.
direction.
The vertical axis
What?
is the frequency. The horizontal axis.
Oh,
is
he's
the
showing like,
direction.
okay, I see. Bottom graph, left graph, you could hear the frequency change that you could, it gets higher to from the right behind. Oh, okay. I think I see like what this actually means now. Okay. I wonder if this is how they actually used it for the headsets and stuff.
Front, back, left, right, and the color is the
Physics.
degree
Don't
of
act like you know
elevation
this
of
shit
sound
either.
at that frequency.
I think I get where they're
HRTF
coming
is
from with this
unique
though.
to an individual as a fingerprint is. In fact, you're looking at mine right now. Here's how we measure an HRTF. We've taken hundreds of people through this process. We put a microphone in the subject's left and right ear canals, and then sit the subject down in the middle of an array of 22 speakers. We then play an audio sweep from each speaker as we rotate the subject. In the course of 10 or 20 minutes, we're able to...
Excuse me? Wait. Run that back. What were you doing to these people?
RTF. We've taken hundreds of people through this process. We put a microphone in the subject's left and right ear canals, and then sit the subject down in the middle of an array of 22 speakers. We then play an audio sweep from each speaker as we rotate the subject. In the course of 10...
I kind of want to be sitting in that to be experimented on for my... that what? What? Sure, like, look at... He doesn't really look happy to be here. I know who this is. This guy's, like, been in a lot of, like, the PlayStation coverages and stuff. He said that he sent hundreds of people to go through this fucking ring of sound to go around people. Wow. Okay. We're going to change the revolutionary design about audio, and you're going to be guinea pigs in a fucking... Literally a guinea pig wheel.
10 or 20
Holy
minutes,
shit.
we're able to sample the HRTF at over 1,000.
Ear station. Oh, ear station? I guess. I guess that's what it's going to be called now. Or some stuff, but that was high school physics. They went too far. I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, if they also want to take your blood sample, I heard they were patenting like something with the controller about taking like your heat or something from your paw. I don't fucking know.
Using an HRTF when rendering audio creates unparalleled quality, but it's computationally expensive. The simplest way to use an HRTF is to process a sound source to make it appear as if it's coming from one of those 1,000 locations we sample. Unfortunately, the processing has to be done in frequency domain rather than time domain, so there's multiple fast Fourier transforms needed for every sound source for every audio tick. That's a lot of multiplies. This computational complexity was the determining factor for our strategy. It meant we had to bite the bullet and design and build a custom hardware unit for 3D audio. Collectively, we're referring to the hardware unit and the proprietary algorithms we run on it as Tempest 3D Audio Tech. The meaning of 3D audio and technology should be pretty obvious here. As for Tempest, I feel it really reflects our goals with audio. It suggests a certain intensity of experience and also hints at your presence within it. We're calling the hardware unit that we built.
Yeah, that's just...
It's based on
we're
AMD
getting better
GPU
audio. This is what we're
technology.
calling
We
it.
modified a compute unit in such a way as to make it very close to the SPUs in PlayStation 3. Remember when I said that they were ideal for audio? So the Tempest engine has no caches, just like an SPU. All data access is via DMA, just like an SPU. Our target was that it would have more power than a CPU, thanks to the parallelism that a GPU can achieve, and that it would be more efficient than our GPU, thanks to the SPU-like architecture. The goal being to make possible near 100% utilization of the CU's vector units. Where we ended up is a unit with roughly the same SIMD power and bandwidth as all
a cooling fan, the
Jaguar
controller.
cores in the
I heard
PlayStation
something
combined.
that they were gonna
If
take
we
like
were to
your
use the same
like a
algorithms as
sample to
PSVR,
like
that's enough
detect
for
your
something
heartbeat
like
or something
5,000
from the
sound
controller.
sources. But of course,
I
we
heard that
want
was
to use
patented,
more
but I don't know if that
complex
was like a
algorithms,
legit
and we don't
thing
need
or
anything
whatever.
like
I guess we'll see as to what the
of
controller will
sounds.
look like and what the
It
ridges
would
and
have
like
been wonderful
we'll have to
if a
take a look
simpler
for
strategy,
ourselves to
such
see
as
what they actually
using
have for it.
Dolby Atmos peripherals could have achieved our goals, but we wanted 3D audio for all, not just those with licensed soundbars or the like. Also, we wanted many hundreds of sound sources, not just the 32 that Atmos supports. And finally, we wanted to be able to throw an overwhelming amount of processing power at the problem, and it wasn't clear what any peripheral might have inside of it. In fact, with the Tempest engine, we've even got enough power that we can allocate some to the games, to the extent that games want to make use of convolution reverb and other algorithms that are either computationally expensive or need high bandwidth. But the primary purpose of the Tempest engine remains 3D audio. Now, 3D audio is a major academic research topic. It's safe to say that no one in the world has all of the answers. And the set of algorithms that has to be invented, tuned, or implemented to realize our vision for 3D audio is immense. For example, use of HRTFs in games is quite complex. Before, I talked about making a sound source appear as if it's coming from one of those 1,000 HRTF sample locations. But for high-quality 3D game audio, we have to handle other possibilities. The sound source might not be at
Back to this.
1,000 HRTF.
Look at how much
locations,
shit
so we have
is
to
on the
blend
screen.
The HRTF data from the closest locations that we have sampled. The sound source might be moving, which needs very special handling. as
Yeah,
the blend
okay.
keeps changing,
Sounds better.
And that can cause phase artifacts.
They
in the
can be
resulting
creative
audio.
with that. I would certainly
Or
think
The
so.
sound source might have a size to it, meaning it should feel as if it's coming from an area rather than a single point. There's also whole categories of approaches to be handled. 3D audio can be implemented using individual processing of 3D sound sources. But alternatively, ambisonics can be used for 3D audio.
What
Ambisonics
is
can
that
be
now?
like the spherical harmonics used in computer graphics. And finally, there's audio devices.
I
The player
didn't even
might
get a
use
chance to see all that,
headphones
but
or
sure.
speakers, or have a higher-end surround sound setup with 6 or more speakers, all of which need different approaches. That's a lot of variations. It's nice to have the computational resources of the Tempest engine, but it's clear that achieving our ultimate goals with 3D audio is going to be a multi-year step.
Looks like a college science problem. This will be on your test.
Headphone audio implementation is
That's
largely
about as much information as I
It's
got
a
from
natural
those
place
tests
for us to
versus what
start.
we
With
see here
headphones, we
anyway.
control exactly what each ear hears, and therefore the algorithmic development and implementation are more straightforward. For TV speakers and stereo speakers, we're in the process of implementing virtual surround sound. The idea being that if you're sitting in a sweet spot in front of the TV, then the sound can be made to feel as if it's coming from any direction, even behind you. Virtual surround sound has a lot in common with 3D audio on headphones, but it's more complex because the left ear can hear the right speaker and vice versa. We have a basic implementation of virtual surround sound up and running. We're now looking at
Yeah, I don't
increasing
think
the
this
size of
technology
that
would
sweet
be
spot,
that,
which is to say,
like,
making the area you need
you
to be
couldn't
in
really
feel
do
the 3D
this
effect
now,
larger.
I don't think,
And
to
we're
make
also
it
working to
100%
boost the sense of locality.
without having headphones
Headphone
on.
audio is the current gold standard for 3D audio on PlayStation 5, but we're going to see what we can do to bring virtual surround sound to a similar level, after which we'll start in on setups with more speakers, such as 6-channel surround sound.
Yep.
It's now to the point where some of the PlayStation 5 games in development are extensively using these systems. One of the game demos allows you to toggle between conventional PlayStation 4 style stereo audio and our new 3D audio. I listened with just an ordinary pair of over-the-ear headphones, and wow, I could feel a difference. 3D audio has that dimensional feel to it. Conventional stereo audio feels smashed flat by comparison. The improvement is obvious. So, a big advancement, but have I entered the Matrix? Does my brain believe
Have I
I'm
entered the
really
Matrix?
there? Like I
He
was
it looks
talking
like
about
he's been in the
earlier when
Matrix
I
since he
explained
started
our
this
target
conference, but sure.
present. Well, the answer is no, but you've probably caught on to what's missing here, namely whose HRTF was being used. It wasn't mine, it was the default HRTF. The audio team analyzed the hundreds that they measured and chose the one they felt was the closest fit to the total game-playing audience. This shows a piece
These
of the
look
default
roughly the
HRTF
same,
on the
except,
left, and my HRTF on the right. You can see that the general
these look
features are
exactly
much
the same.
but the details are quite different. With the default HRTF, as I said, the 3D audio sounds pretty great. When I use my HRTF, though, the audio reaches a higher level of realism, which is to say that when using headphones and my HRTF, I occasionally get fooled and even think a sound is coming from the real world when it's actually coming from the game. A corollary to this is that there are a few people whose HRTFs are sufficiently far from the default HRTF, that's the red dot here, that they can
What is
toggle
this,
between
No Man's
PS4
Sky?
style and
This is
PS5
Mark
style
Cerny's
audio
planet, this is the
and not
default
sense
planet?
much difference. I've had a few people describe the PlayStation 5's 3D audio as sounding like a bit better stereo audio. Presumably, they're the ones at the very edges of this diagram. Which means what HRTF you're using is key. I'd like everyone to be able to experience what I'm experiencing, but obviously it's not possible to measure the HRTF of every PlayStation user. That means HRTF selection and synthesis are going to be big topics going forward as the Tempest technology matures.
Okay, sure.
At PlayStation 5
So they're
launch,
saying that
we'll be
this
offering
technology is
a choice
out
of
there, we just
5
need to define it.
HRTFs. There's a simple test where you pick the one that gives you the best locality. That's
You
just
would
the first
heard
step,
it
though. This is an
if you had a robot
open-ended
ear, Grandma's
approach to
Boy. I
You'll
remember
be
seeing
sending us a
Grandma's Boy.
photo
I
of
just
your
don't
ear, and we'll
remember
choose a neural
most
network
of
to
it
pick
because
the
I only seen
closest
it that
picture
one
to
time,
from the
and
library.
I haven't
Maybe
seen
you'll be
it
sending
since.
us
Like
a
when it was
video
like when it
of your
first came
ears
out, so I don't
or your
exactly
head,
remember that.
and we'll make a
There's a
3D
really good
model of
game
them
where the
and
graphics are so
synthesize those
realistic.
parts.
Well,
Maybe
they
you'll
certainly
play an
depict
audio
the
game
graphics of
tuning
the
HRTF,
glasses
where we
versus
subtly
the
change
graphics of
the gameplay
the
and home
Vio
in on the
tablet
HRTF to
and
get you
the
highest
once
score.
black
We
hair now
expect
red
the
hair
matches will
highlighted.
the
So
best.
the improvements
This is
from the
a
last
journey we're all
last
walking
game
together
certainly
over
has
the
gone
next
up
few
since
years. Ultimately, we're
since the
committing to
past few
enabling
years since it's been
everyone
out.
to
So
experience that
I'm
next
really
level
liking the
of
upgrade
realism.
for sure.
Hopefully, I've been able to illustrate a bit about our design and decision-making process today and why PlayStation 5 has the feature set that it does. Now comes the fun part. We get to see how the development community takes advantage of that feature.
Oh fuck! I
I'm
thought he
hoping
said.
for the complete
Now here comes the fun part.
We'll
This is what the
attain audio,
console looks
ray
like.
tracing,
Oh,
the
I got my
capabilities
shit
of the
fucking hoped
SSD,
up for
or
nothing.
something else? I guess we'll find out soon enough. Thank you for your time today.
I definitely don't want to see that. Oh. Okay. That. It just ends. What? It just ends? Top comment. Are those shadows real people? Now I'm an engineer. Yeah, right. I didn't know my school teamed up with Sony to make online classes. Yeah, for sure. The quarantine's got me watching hour-long tech conferences that I don't even remotely comprehend. Fair enough. When will the PS5 come out? SSD. Yup. Now you can see the memes flooded into the internet about this event. Rip myself. One thing that I learned is that my games won't take 200 hours to finish copying a game. Oh, that was another thing. I forgot. That's like whatever updates and shit like that's gonna be patched out. It's gonna make it better. Let's talk about the ear. Eargate. Ask my math teacher a simple question. My math teacher the entire conference. Oh, okay. All right. I think that's a little too harsh. Because this was supposed to be like behind closed curtains and like specifically talking to like investors and people who are behind the like know exactly what they were saying. This guy's voice sounds like I'm listening to an audiobook. Yeah, I'll give that one a thumbs up. That's fair. Yeah, that's funny. And the math teacher, yeah, for sure. But I actually do like math, but that's fair. All right. Well, all right. Wow, that was a lot. And so little, in the weirdest way possible. To summarize, I guess for everyone else, PS5 no date yet. PS5 no controller reveal, no console reveal, no launch titles, no nothing. The stuff that consumers actually care about. But I did care about some things that they did talk about, mainly being of load time issues, which is still not the greatest. But it sounds like it's going to be relatively zero, much like how I felt the differences between Kingdom Hearts 1.5, 2.5 Remix on PS3 versus that same game but being ported over to PS4. The load times between those two are immensely different, and no one should on their right minds be playing the PS3 versions if you've seen the load times for both. There's almost no reason why unless you just only had a PS3. This sounds like it's going to be that type of upgrade for like load time specifically, so just how instantaneous they are versus to like what we could possibly have had from, patch updates and stuff that we have now, in which those really are a big fucking problem, and looks like that's going to be addressed. That's very good. Second thing that I liked was the fact that it's going to be modeling while you're like playing the game, or like how much space that the game actually has for developers to like kind of render and make sure that things are 100% as you're going through the games themselves. That sounds like it's an improvement, and that they don't exactly have to use too much memory or have more accessibility to more memory, so that way things could be more instantaneous. That sounds great. Literally the sounds great part, because apparently the sound's going to be great. What else was there that I mentioned? And the patches. Like I think I just briefly mentioned it, but it sounds like that the patches are going to be non-existent to load it up because of the solid state drive that they're using rather than it being loaded. Oh, and if you're going to be using backwards compatibility from the PS4 or whatever it's going to be from, whatever saves that you have are going to be coming from the hard drive, and some boost is going to be added from the hard drive to make it better and run and perform much better onto the PS5, to which I hope that the biggest game that I really want to see upgrades for and to make it look great and to run better is Bloodborne, because unfortunately Bloodborne is kind of stuck in that PS4 limbo of 30 frames per second and those long load times. If they were to fix that up, I will definitely be playing Bloodborne so many more times than I would be without it, and hopefully they kind of give that same treatment to everything that's going to be transferred over, including Devil May Cry 5, because DMC5 actually has a really bad load issue too, especially like when it comes to some cutscenes. Like some of them just like take like a full on 10 seconds to progress from like the end of the cutscene to like the mission select screen or whatever the case. And then you see PC run those games, and then they're like night and day. They're fucking different. So I don't know. This was this has something going on for it. At least we have something now versus nothing, which is a great step forward considering the game is still the console is still relatively slated to come out sometime this year. And hopefully it comes out before, if I was to guess, hopefully it comes out before Black Friday. So that way nobody really goes too fucking crazy, trying to buy it after the fact or whatever for Christmas. I mean, like I said, I'm probably going to get both. I will probably get the PS5 first, and then maybe down the line just get the Xbox Series X, whatever they're going to definitively call it, if they even call it that. I don't know. I don't know. We still don't know what it looks like, but for someone like me that is trying to understand it, and for people that want to see numbers and stuff, that was good for them. But I guess we'll have to wait. I'm going to definitively say we're going to get it like a full-on reveal, maybe May time, because of this whole virus shit. And I don't know. We're gonna wait. We're gonna, of course, see like what it's gonna look like. I don't know when that's really gonna be, but I'm gonna slate it for May time. But yeah, you actually like the PS5 graphics are really good. Why is everybody hating? Yeah, no, I don't think anybody's hating. I think they just want to see the console. PSP BBS versus PS4 for fucking sure. What's up, CP3? PS4 will come out with Corona included, don't worry. Oh, nice. I like that. I like how they're adding new features to our consoles with deadly viruses included. Very nice. I'm glad that PlayStation is now adding features to what we've been craving for. Certain death is what I think they used to call it. All right, but that's my reaction to. I should have seen this earlier. This wasn't really warranted as a reaction. Whenever the hell the PS5 will come out and actually have hardware details and features and all that, whatever conference they'll do for that, I will certainly do another reaction to that, and we'll probably get a better understanding and better stuff coming out of me as to what I can say when that comes out. Whenever that is, I will certainly inform you guys as to when that will be and when we stream that, because I want you guys to see that as well. But at least for now, there that is. We have something better than zero, and we're not done with the day yet. I'm going to start up my PS3. I'm going to let things boot up and just make sure everything runs. But at least for this part of the recording, the PS5 now is an actual thing with some information behind it, and I don't know. We'll have to find out as to when the official launch and release and all that will come out. But until then, stick around if you guys want to refresh your streams. I will type in the chat to when to refresh, because hopefully we'll be able to complete Infamous 2. That's what we're going to be playing today by the end of the session. So if you guys want to stick around for that, definitely refresh your streams. But at least for the local recording, that was my reaction to the PS5, whatever that was supposed to be, Numbers Edition. That's probably what I'll call it on the video. But I hope you guys at least were a little bit more understanding, or what. I hope you got something out of it, because I got something out of it, and it wasn't a lot, but it was certainly something. But yeah, guys, so I will be back. Give me about about 5 minutes. It's not going to take too long. But at least again for the audio recording, I appreciate you guys coming through, And for everyone else still here, just refresh your streams, and I'll be back with some Infamous 2 in about 5 minutes or so. Okay, guys? See you guys later. Hopefully we'll see something with PlayStation 5 someday. I don't know. I'll keep you guys informed. See you guys in a bit.